The day had started like any other, with sunlight spilling lazily through the windows and the soft hum of morning traffic outside. I had just finished my coffee when my phone buzzed. It was her. The name alone made my heart tighten in an inexplicable way, as if some unspoken tension had been building between us for years, waiting for a moment like this to explode. I answered, trying to sound casual, but her voice came through, trembling, fragile, coated with the kind of
Please, we need
sadness
to talk
that
about
stops
this.
time.
I can't let it end like
I need
this.
to tell you something, she whispered. I could hear the catch in her breath, the way she tried to steady herself, and I knew,
Everything's gonna be
before she
okay.
even said the words,
We're in this
that
together.
something had changed everything. I'm pregnant, she finally said. The words hanging in the air, heavy and electric. My first instinct was to ask if she was okay, but the second part of her sentence broke me a little. He left me. My chest clenched, my stomach sank, and the world seemed to tilt. I didn't think. I just said, "You're not alone. I'm staying right here." And at that moment, something inside me shifted. An invisible line had been crossed. She had always been strong, independent, but the way her voice cracked made her seem so human, so vulnerable. And all I could think was that she shouldn't face this alone. I rushed over, ignoring the morning routine, the calls, the emails, because nothing mattered but her. When I arrived, I found her sitting on the edge of her couch, hands trembling over her stomach, eyes glistening. She tried to smile, a weak attempt at normalcy, but the tears betrayed her. I sat beside her, simply taking her hand, letting her feel my presence. Words felt inadequate, so I just stayed, letting the silence speak the promises I couldn't articulate yet. Hours passed as she told me everything. How she had found out a week ago, how he had walked away the moment he heard the news, how she felt trapped in a world that suddenly seemed unbearably lonely. I listened, nodding, occasionally squeezing her hand, trying to convey that I understood more than words could ever say. And as she spoke, I realized something profound. Fear, betrayal, despair. They were all temporary, fleeting shadows that could be chased away by the light of presence and genuine care. I promised her then, silently, that I wouldn't just be a momentary relief, a passing figure in her storm. I would be there, through the midnight cries, through the exhaustion, through the uncertainty that pregnancy, single motherhood, and heartbreak would bring. And when she leaned against me, finally allowing herself to cry, I knew that staying right here wasn't just about proximity. It was a choice, a commitment that would define us both. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, I made her tea and we sat by the window, talking about nothing and everything. She laughed softly at a story from my childhood, and for a moment, the weight of the world lifted from her shoulders. In her eyes, I saw gratitude, fear, relief, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be okay. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to promise her a perfect life. I just stayed. And sometimes, staying was enough to rewrite a future that seemed broken beyond repair. That night, before leaving her apartment, I placed my hand over hers and said, softly but firmly, "I'm not going anywhere. We'll face this together." She looked at me, eyes wide, searching for any hint of doubt, and found none. In that glance, an unspoken understanding passed between us. Life had changed irrevocably, but it had not ended. And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she wasn't alone, where someone would hold her hand through every storm, no matter how dark it got. As I walked back home, I felt the gravity of what had begun, but also an undeniable surge of purpose. This wasn't just about support, it was about love in its rawest, most human form. And tomorrow we would continue one step at a time. The next morning, I returned with breakfast, a small bouquet of flowers, and the kind of determination that only comes from knowing you've made a choice that matters. She opened the door, eyes red but bright, and I felt a wave of protectiveness wash over me. We sat on the floor of her tiny kitchen, eating scrambled eggs and toast, and for the first time since the news, I noticed a hint of relief in her smile. We didn't speak much at first. Words felt unnecessary. Every glance, every gentle touch, every shared silence was a promise, a vow. And then she began to talk. Not about the heartbreak, but about the future, about the baby, about what life could look like if fear didn't dictate our choices. I listened, offering advice where I could, but mostly just absorbing her hopes, letting her know that I believed in them as much as she did. As days turned into weeks, our bond deepened. I helped her prepare for doctor's visits, accompanied her when she felt alone, and learned to navigate the delicate balance between being supportive and respecting her autonomy. There were hard days filled with tears, exhaustion, and frustration, but we faced them together. One evening, after a particularly stressful appointment, she collapsed onto the couch, head in my lap, and whispered, "I don't know how I would have survived this without you." I stroked her hair and replied, "You wouldn't have had to. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, I realized that staying wasn't just an act of compassion. It had become an act of love. Love in its most unadorned, honest form. A promise to face fear, uncertainty, and change without running, without judgment, without hesitation. We laughed when she found out the baby's first kick, cried when she had moments of doubt, and celebrated small victories together, like hearing the heartbeat, picking out baby clothes, even deciding on names. And every time I saw her smile, every time she reached for my hand, every time she allowed herself to be vulnerable, I understood that my choice to stay had created a new world for both of us. One night, as we sat wrapped in a blanket on her balcony, looking at the city lights, she turned to me and whispered, "I thought I was alone. I thought I was finished. But you made me feel safe again." I took her hand, held it close to my chest, and said, "You're never alone. Not now, not ever. We're in this together." The months passed, and life unfolded in unexpected ways. The fear and heartbreak that had once seemed insurmountable began to fade, replaced by hope, anticipation, and a profound sense of connection. We were no longer just two people caught in a storm. We were a team, a family in the making. And when she finally gave birth, the moment I held that tiny, perfect life in my arms, I knew that every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it. Because staying had mattered, showing up had mattered, love had mattered. And as she rested her head on my shoulder, exhausted but radiant, I whispered one last promise. "We're not alone, not ever, and we never will be." From that day forward, the three of us faced life together, unshaken by fear, strengthened by trust, and bound by a love that had been forged in the quiet moments when staying, simply staying, was all that mattered. The first months after the baby's arrival were nothing short of chaotic. Sleep was scarce. Every cry seemed louder than the last. And there were moments when the weight of responsibility pressed down on both of us so hard it felt like the air had disappeared. Yet, amidst the exhaustion, there was an undeniable beauty in the small, intimate moments we shared. I learned to change diapers at odd hours, to soothe her when she cried, to hold her in ways that made her feel safe even when the world outside felt uncertain. She, in turn, found strength she never knew she had. Her resilience blossomed like a flower pushing through concrete. But even as we navigated this new reality, there were cracks in the calm we'd built. Fear still lingered in her eyes, the kind of fear that whispered, "What if he never comes back?" What if I fail? I held her hands through it all, repeating the same words again and again until they became a mantra between us. You are not alone. I'm staying right here. One rainy afternoon, we sat by the window watching the drops streak down the glass. She cradled our baby, rocking gently, and I could see the shadow of doubt in her eyes. She admitted, quietly, that she had moments of wishing things had been different, that she had imagined a father for her child, that she had imagined someone who wouldn't leave. I didn't flinch. I didn't judge. I just leaned in, held her shoulder, and whispered, "It's okay to feel that way, but you're not alone anymore. I won't leave. We'll figure this out together." That night, as the baby slept in the bassinet beside us, we talked for hours about dreams, fears, and the future. She confessed her guilt at not being able to do everything perfectly, at being less than enough in her own eyes, and I reminded her that perfection was never the goal. What mattered was love, consistency, and showing up for each other. And she was already doing that every day. As weeks turned into months, we began to find rhythm in the chaos. I would make her coffee while she fed the baby. She would laugh at my failed attempts to put the baby in a swaddle, and slowly, our days filled with warmth and laughter as much as they did with tears and challenges. Friends and family noticed the change too. They saw a woman who was no longer just surviving but thriving, a man who wasn't just standing by but fully present, and a tiny life growing surrounded by love and stability. But life wasn't always easy. Bills piled up, health scares appeared, and the shadow of the one who had left never fully disappeared. There were moments when she would flinch at a text, moments when I would see her tension spike at the thought of the past, and moments when I myself felt the immense pressure of responsibility. But we held on to each other, letting our connection act as a tether against the storm. One day, while walking through the park with the baby in a stroller, she stopped, looked at me with tears welling in her eyes, and said, "I never imagined someone would stay. I never imagined that someone could choose to be here, fully, without hesitation." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and replied, "I chose you. I chose this family, and I'll keep choosing it every single day." That simple declaration, though quiet, carried more weight than any grand gesture could. In that moment, I realized that staying was not just about being physically present. It was about choosing to face fear, uncertainty, and life's hardships hand in hand, no matter how difficult the path became. Months passed, and with every challenge, our bond deepened. She began to laugh more freely, to dream more openly, to trust not only me but herself. I watched her rediscover herself, the woman who had once faced heartbreak alone now standing tall, supported and loved. And through it all, the baby grew, a living symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of unwavering commitment. Nights of exhaustion became nights of quiet wonder, days of chaos became moments of shared joy, and the promise I had made, "I'm staying right here," was no longer just words. It had become a life we built together, a fortress against despair, a foundation for a future we could face without fear. And in those quiet, stolen moments, watching her sleep, holding our baby, feeling the warmth of family we had chosen for ourselves, I understood the truth that had been revealed to me from the very beginning. Love is not always about grand gestures, about fleeting passion, or romantic cliches. Love is about showing up. It's about staying. And in staying, we create a world where even the deepest wounds can heal, even the hardest nights can turn into days filled with hope, and even the smallest voices, the tiny heartbeat in her belly, now ours to nurture, can shape the most extraordinary future.